Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's pretty good. It's seeming like it's more likely that we will have some sort of football type substance to cover this weekend. That's a good thing. We had one of our most watched morning scoops ever on YouTube on Tuesday morning because I think we had a lot of viewers from the state of Texas because I put Urban Meyer to Texas ? And a picture of Urban Meyer as the thumbnail. So look, we have just mentioned Urban Meyer to Texas again. So I think this episode of Buckeye Weekly might be called "Is Urban Meyer Going to Texas?"
That would be some really, really good clickbait type stuff. And, these algorithms, they think they're so smart. You know who's smart? People who wrote those and then manipulate them. And when I point at myself saying people, I meant generally because I don't know any of this stuff. And so, Tom, whatever you tell me to name it, who is this Urban Meyer person?
What is a Texas? Yes, and I I have to take umbrage with your take issue with your characterization that people are smart, because if 2020 has taught us everything or anything, not sure that's the lesson that have been taken away this year. But there's still a whole nother month for everyone to redeem themselves.
Oh yeah, everybody's cramming for the final. Yep, they're gonna nail it. They're gonna nail it. Everybody's just hoping for that C-, whatever. Just let us get out through the year. Just whatever the grade is, as long as it's a passing grade, that's all we need. And so, Tom, as you mentioned, there will be football type activities returning to the campus. In fact, Ohio State announced today that the football team will resume, quote, organized team activities this afternoon in preparation for its game Saturday against Michigan State in East Lansing, Michigan. That includes actual football practice. And not just, hey, let's do some jogging and weightlifting, like 1900s dudes in with the leotard or the whatever, the onesie with the 1,000-pound written on their weights. I'm sure they're going to be doing that as well, but they're also going to be doing actual football practice. But what will that practice look like is the question that I have, Tom, because they altered their practice last week because of how close they were to the threshold. They are still close to that threshold because it has only been 6 or 7 days. So it's not like everything is cleared and there are still issues there. And so what does practice look like this week? Will there be helmets? Will there be, if there are helmets, will there be physical contact? Will there be anything more than just maybe some positional drills or walkthroughs? What do you think, Tom? Tell me your answer. Is it going to be full practice, or is it just going to be more of what it was like last week?
Well, Ryan Day talked to us on Saturday and said that they needed to have like one good practice on Thursday, and that would be enough that they would feel probably ready for Saturday. So I would think at the very least, even if you have a walkthrough type-ish practice on Tuesday, or you do something in shells or something on Wednesday, you probably need to have some kind of a full padded practice on Thursday, because going up there without having practiced at all for the last week in any kind of meaningful way, like that's not going to be good for anyone. So they've got to do something. At some point you have to kind of take the bubble wrap off and do something a little bit more like a normal football practice before you get up there. So maybe that's 1 day, maybe that's 2 days. It would not surprise me if when the Tuesday practice pictures come out, if it looks like last Thursday or Friday when they had, no one's in helmets and it's just sort of jerseys and shorts and that's it. And, if that's the case, like, that's fine. Like, whatever they're getting today is more than I think they had any reasonable ability to expect as of last weekend. So, if there are no more positive tests on Monday, no more positive tests on Tuesday, and they feel comfortable enough to be out there again today, that's a huge win, even if it's not a normal Tuesday practice.
Yeah, and the normal Tuesday practice, as we know, is Bloody Tuesday. That's the most physical practice of the week. And I would be shocked, frankly, if they go from no practices since Friday. They did 3 days of walkthroughs, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday walkthrough, and then they just ramp it up into a full contact Tuesday, Bloody Tuesday, after having one last week. That was like their last full contact practice was last Tuesday. So I don't think they're just going to go ramping back into this, especially being at their thresholds and just being concerned about everything. And so I would expect maybe there's a Wednesday, Thursday where they try to get a little bit more physical, and then they keep it a regular Friday because they're always wanting to keep everything as routine as possible. So maybe that will be the way they go. We will talk to Larry Johnson Wednesday at noon. Is that correct, Tom? Head coach Larry Johnson?
Yes, we're expecting to speak to Ohio State's interim head coach Larry Johnson Wednesday. I don't know if we're getting day as well. I'm not sure. I think that was a little bit left a little vague as far as exactly who we're going to get. But yeah, we should, normally we'd be talking to people on Tuesday and Wednesday. Everything this week was like, well, we'll let you know when we know. And the fact that we are getting someone on Wednesday is probably a good sign. They were more or less waiting to figure out if they thought they were going to be able to play before they put someone out there to answer a bunch of questions with, I don't know yet. So the fact that we're getting someone on Wednesday is probably a decent indication that they feel like they probably are pretty close to having some answers, which is, again, this counts as progress. This counts as good news this week.
And I will just a quick plug. The members of the Ask the Insiders board at BuckeyeScoop.com were aware this was coming. They got the news first, Tom. They were the board. I think the Nevada Buck broke the news that there would be some return to normalcy with the practice. And so that's just one of the benefits of being a member of the site. I'm just throwing that in there in case anybody still has not joined. So it will be good to talk to Larry Johnson. There's all kinds of things that we should probably have him for an hour, but it'll probably be maybe 30 minutes tops. And who even knows then? And I'm even wondering, Tom, normally we get our availability report on Friday of who is going to play and who isn't. You had texted me and said, maybe Saturday. I'm thinking maybe not at all, because it's not a requirement from the Big Ten to do this. This is just something that Ryan Day has done since he took over, because he doesn't answer questions about injuries or illnesses now. And this is just, it was a way for him to appease the media. Like, I'm not going to talk about this, but at the end of the week, I'll give you a little bit of something. Like, I'll throw this out there. That way you don't ask me. And then by the end of the week, you'll get some sort of answers. I would not be shocked. There's no reason to let Michigan State know who is not going to show up. And so while I am looking, we all want the names and we want to talk about what this means. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that until after the game, frankly.
Yeah, and there's no huge incentive for Ohio State to release those names. And, I think everyone has kind of got a sense that this is going to be some kind of a chunk of the team. And there were enough people who tested positive last week to not play a game. That was, so those people are going to be out this week. Those people are going to be out next week against Michigan, and that under that 21-day protocol, assuming they have not, tested out of it with being initially a false positive or something like that. You also have the contact tracing people. And that's something that I think people are not necessarily thinking about right now in terms of how many people could be impacted here. That if you are roommates with someone, even if you have not tested positive, you may be getting, in that contact tracing protocol. And we have not gotten a specific answer on exactly what that entails to get out of that. Is that you can, if you have 4 straight negative tests, you can test out of that? Is that you have to wait 7 days from first exposure? You have to wait 10 days from first exposure? You have to wait 14 days from first exposure? You've kind of heard a couple different answers there. And you asked Chris Holtman about that, right? Mm-hmm. How that impacts the basketball team. So does he know?
Well, and that was the thing. I asked him about it, and he gave me an answer. I'm like, yeah, but how many negative tests do you have to have before you can test out of being quarantined from just a contact trace? And he said, I don't know. I don't think I've been given that number, and I don't know that number. And I bet if somebody gets sick and they have some contact tracing, he's going to ask that same question I asked and get that number. And this is, I know people are like, why don't you people know this? Why don't reporters know this? Why isn't this common knowledge? And some people may know it. It's just, this is such a different thing having to cover this. And then the way we are allowed to ask or not allowed to ask questions. It's all Zoom calls, so you can have the button that says raise hand, press Tom. I know you know this, for the entire session and not get called on. But they want you to ask just one question, and there are all kinds of questions. And I think sometimes the best question is the one you come up with after everything is done and the show is over. You're like, crap, why this? Now I need to know this, and you can't get that answered, and nobody else asked it. And sometimes questions don't come up until the situation comes up, as Chris Holtmann may find out when they've got some contact tracing, because right now he doesn't know, it's not a concern for him. And then when it does become a concern, now I'm going to go find out that information. And so this has been really difficult to cover and get all of the answers. I think you and I have done a good job throwing out questions and answers with the things we've been doing after game cancellations, and Ryan Day getting his COVID positive test and things like that. We are trying to provide as many answers as possible, and yet there's still stuff like this. Very simple. How do you test out of contact tracing?
Well, and I feel a little bit better about the fact that we don't know if Chris Holtmann doesn't know. Like, that seems like that's something that should have come up at some point. And this is also one of those things where the protocols may be changing a little bit. I mean, some of this stuff does change as the science changes. That, hey, before we thought you needed to be quarantined for X number of days, and now, well, it turns out you really, if you're going to develop symptoms or you're going to pop a positive test, it's going to happen within a smaller number of days. So now maybe you can change that requirement. And you see that stuff constantly. And a lot of that is confusing. And a lot of that is, one of these sources of frustration, people trying to figure out, like, hey, I was around someone and it was for like 15 minutes and it was 7 days ago. And am I still, I think probably at this point, most people have gone through that at least once to some degree or another, unless you have just been like living as a hermit in the woods. So that's something I think we can all relate to some degree. But yeah, it's a little strange that there's not a definitive answer on this. It seems like there should be a very black and white, with as much as the Big Ten has laid out in black and white, and you can agree or disagree with some of the things that they have in black and white, but they have laid a lot of these things out in black and white. It's strange that we haven't seen that like explicitly spelled out, that if someone is exposed, in a roommate or what they were sitting in a meeting less than 6 feet away for an hour or whatever, that in that case, even if they don't test positive, they need to quarantine for 72 hours, 96 hours, 7 days, 10 days, whatever, or they can test negative, 4 times, 5 times, whatever, to test out of it. This is all a little bit uncertain, and I think this is all probably a little bit inconsistent across different conferences as well, which is, another thing that's just kind of, you just kind of shake your head like, why is there not just one standard across the entire country? But somehow I don't think there is.
So I was checking with somebody at Ohio State on the contact tracing on the football side of things, and they're like, we don't think, person didn't think there was any need for it because of the daily testing, but then added, I don't know that for sure, which just tells you all of the questions that people still have. I was reading an article about like a mid-major college basketball coach saying that they used to be able to manipulate the contact tracing by having no physical contact practice like the day before a game. That way, if you tested positive or something, well, like nobody else was near anybody, so there's no contact tracing, so everybody should be fine. But then they've added like these testing 3 times a week, and you can't really manipulate it as much. And but also in basketball, you can test out of contact tracing, because obviously if one person gets it, you are all practicing on that same court, in that same paint. You're going to have 7 guys, 5, 6 guys that are going to be probably ruled to have been contact traced, but they can test out of it, and to the point where it's not a concern, at least according to an article I read. But then when I asked the head coach, he's like, nobody said anything to me about that. But then, as you said, Tom, everybody's different. Big Ten is different. The article I was reading was talking about the Big Ten, but other conferences as well. And I don't want to say it's the Wild West, because there were no laws there. I don't know a land where there's different laws for different people. Oh, yes, I do. That's called America.
I do like the idea of Chris Holtman being like John Candy at the end of National Lampoon's Vacation, like thumbing through like a clipboard, like nobody's notified this office of anything. I don't know. And like, I mean, yeah, pretty much yes, the end. That's it. I don't know. It's just this is all, I think Ohio State has been very fortunate to not have these issues until now. And I mean, they came out and said like functionally a 0% positivity rate from essentially August until last week, which is remarkable. I mean, that's incredible. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have the answers to this, because all of this stuff has not come up before, and hasn't really come up for any of them before. It hasn't come up since August 11th. That's when the season got canceled. So that was even during the time when there were there was no season on the horizon. There was nothing, and they were still testing at 0% for that whole time. That's pretty remarkable. So yeah, I assume that someone inside that building knows exactly what the protocol is and knows exactly what it means. It'll be interesting to see when we hear that. I mean, that'll obviously be something that I would hope gets asked to Larry Johnson on Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, this is in a year full of uncertainty and weird and unprecedented issues. Like this is one of those. Yep.
I saw like last week, Boston College still has like no positive tests. And I'm just thinking that is so wasteful. All of those tests. It's like opening up a can of Pepsi and just dumping it, opening up another, just so wasteful. But it does show you that it is possible to maintain a clean environment. But I also think some of it is just chance because of the way people just live their lives and not live it willy-nilly, but just day to day. It is hard to avoid being near somebody who may or may not have it. And even if you get it and you try to like, what did I do wrong? It's like, I don't know that I did anything wrong. It's just maybe I should not have gotten in that conga line. Yes. But I don't think we should be blaming the victim right now.
Yeah. It's, you talk to someone who's gotten it before. It's like, where do you think you got it? It's like, I went to the gas station 5 days ago, and I went to the grocery store 9 days ago. And like, where did you get it? Like, I don't know. Like, and symptoms develop. I Googled this at one point. It was like symptoms develop between 3 and 14 days. Like, oh, good. Very specific window. Then that will make it easy. This isn't like food poisoning where it's like, what did I eat 6 hours ago? Okay. There's your answer right there. Yeah.
It's like,
that was one of the questions. I mean, you mentioned having my hand up during a press conference and not getting to ask a question. That was one of the questions I was really interested to ask on Saturday with Day and Gene Smith was, do you know how it got in and do you know how it spread? Because that's a really important part of, you're putting in these new protocols to keep this from happening again. Well, you have to figure out what went wrong the first time, because otherwise you can't solve the problem. So, how did it get in? And I don't need to know that, hey, this player went out and got Taco Bell and got it there. Like, you don't need that. But like, did someone go out and do something? Did it come in? Did someone pick it up at a hotel in a road game? Did they, did one of the food workers in the facility have it? And that's why it ended up in a bunch of different places, because they talked about the fact that it's not like confined to one position group. It's not, it's just kind of like all over the place, and there's not really a huge pattern. That was one of the things that Dr. Borcher said on Saturday. So like, okay, why? Like that's a really important question. And, maybe they have the answer to that, but we don't have the answer to that yet.
Yeah. And the contact tracing, like 100 years ago, the pandemic, I assume the contact tracing was much easier. Like, the 3 to 14 day window of whatever. And they'd be like, well, where have you been in these 2 weeks? And you're like, well, I went to the market. I went to, like the general store 3 days, a week ago. And then they're like, well, where else did you go? And you're like, where else is there to go? I went to the general store. Then I came home. And, next week I will go again to the general store. and that's it. You know, are you? I'm not going to the arcade. I'm not going to see the movies. You know, I'm not. We're not. You know, it's 1918. There's not a lot to do here until, you know, many years down the road. From what I've heard about, you know, the future is what they're saying back then, and now it's you know, well, the gas station, well this, well that, and it's not like you're trying to come into contact with people, and even, you know, Josh Myers, who says I've gone here, I've gone there, and that's it. Like, they're not doing anything really from what we hear. Although, you know, I'm sure we could see pictures on Snapchat or Instagram about, look, this football player is living his life outside of you know, somewhere downtown, and, you know, oh, how dare he? But it's hard for, you know, everybody just to lock it down, and I think Ohio State has done as good a job as you could hope to, and maybe we would have more answers if this would all have happened in like August, and we would know all of the questions, you know, like because that's another thing, is just figuring out the questions as we get them, and then you're like trying to find out who can answer them, and it's a very small percentage of people because there's only so many experts, and it's good that the listeners have two right here, Tom.
Yeah, it's good that we have access to people who know more than we do. I think has been one of my biggest takeaways. Because yeah, I mean I mean, your point there is one that's probably worth sort of expanding on a little bit. Like, we don't necessarily, like, we know the obvious questions, but there are specific circumstances that, like, we haven't necessarily thought through because you really haven't seen them, and you haven't necessarily heard these conversations with regard to, say, Wisconsin or Minnesota right now, where, you know, Wisconsin had issues earlier in the year, Maryland had issues earlier in the year, Minnesota's got some pretty big issues right now. But, you know, you're not hearing, you know, there was a report that Minnesota had, I think, 34 or 40 people out at one point. But, you know, did they all test positive? Are 10 of them tested positive and 30 of them are contact traced? Like, none of that has come out. And, you know, but until you actually see one of these circumstances and you hear some of the specifics, you don't even know, like, what questions to ask. You don't know, you know, you can hear, okay, roughly this number is out. Okay, here are maybe some of the names. Okay. But, you know, there's a fall-on effect from there where, hey, if this guy is out, who else might that impact in terms of a contact tracing thing and all that? And just because this hasn't been spelled out, because the Big Ten hasn't necessarily laid all these things out, you know, in writing, black and white in front of everyone, we're all kind of learning together. It's kind of a fun adventure.
Isn't it, though? So I don't know if we've already mentioned this. Ryan Day will be out for the Michigan State game. I know we've been talking about Larry Johnson, but just because sometimes you can't be clear enough when you talk about something, and then there's a question about something you've already talked about. Hey, is Ryan Day out? Yes, he is still going to be out. Tom, did you see Lincoln Riley had an interview session today, and he's like, we've reached out, you know, we're going to have a local tequila peddler on staff to help us out, and local tequila peddler named Bob Stoops helping out. And I believe he's going to be on the sidelines for Saturday as well. Tom, Ohio State has some former head coaches that could be out there to help out if, you know, there is a need. You've got Urban Meyer, you've got Jim Tressel, you got John Cooper out there. Luke Fickell, probably too much of a snob to help out if the need be. But I think it's interesting that that Oklahoma is going that way, and I don't foresee Ohio State doing that. But what if, Tom? What if, say, I don't know, say Bill Davis volunteers?
My biggest question is, can I get my bet in before the line moves? Yeah, I don't think that's probably going to be how they're going to play that this weekend. But we'll see. It'll be interesting.
2020, baby. So then I think the most interesting thing for me is Ohio State announces, yeah, we're resuming practice and we're planning on playing this week, and everybody is so thrilled. It's like, yes, football is back. But then there will soon come the realization of there are a lot of guys out. No idea. Fans have no idea who they are. And so now that kind of just starts sinking in. Yes, we've got football, and it's like, but now who is playing? And then you can get back to, I guess, worrying about who's out, who's sick, who won't make it, who is contact traced, who is, um, presumed positive. Michigan shut down because of, I think, one positive and a bunch of presumed positives, and it turned out that it was just, like I said, just like one positive, and so I think they're going to be getting back into action soon. But the realization of football returning is good, but then it brings along, what is that going to look like on Saturday? And I wish we could talk more openly about it, or just, we're not going to speculate on any names or anything like that. But it's just going to be interesting to, I don't even know how exactly to use the right words, Tom. But yes, be excited that football is back. But now you can start, panicking about, well, who's going to be there?
Yeah, and who is going to be there is kind of going to be an interesting open question. And even having heard some of the names that are potentially involved, like, you don't know what the sort of fall off effects from those are going to be. I think a reasonable expectation for this weekend is, there's been a lot of talk about Ohio State, and they were fourth in the initial playoff rankings, and we'll find out where they are in the second weekend's playoff rankings tonight. But the first week it was like, well, they're number 4, but if they can just improve the defense and continue the dominating offense, then they have a chance to move up. And everyone's okay. Very important to win, but win with some style, win with some dominate, really show dominating control of the game all the way through. This is an Al Davis weekend for Ohio State. Get up there, play the game, just win, baby. Get on the plane, come back home, have everyone test negative again. That's it. That's what success looks like. No style points, no expectation of blowout, no expectation. I have no idea what the point spread is right now. None. But
I would be surprised if there's even one up right now.
Yeah, this seems very much like a game that would have no line right now. Yeah. Whatever that point spread is, like, don't even look at it. Don't set your expectations for, there is a football game this weekend, and Ohio State will probably have a decent chance to win it. Period. End of sentence, end of paragraph, end of story, -30. That's it. I don't, like, we do game predictions at the end of the week. Like, I don't know what how confident are you in your game prediction? Like, this is going to be the ultimate test, because you and I always somehow end up with picking like 2 points off from each other without planning it. Like, if we do that this weekend, like, something is, like, I'm going to be convinced that you're copying off my paper. Because I mean, depending on who's out, like, sure. I mean, if Ohio State has pretty much all their starters and the guys who are out are mostly backups, like, sure. I mean, that's, they might win by 3 touchdowns. If you're missing most of a position group or a decent chunk of a position group, like, well, depending on what position group it is, you might be looking at a much closer game and a much either lower scoring if it's on offense or higher scoring if it's on defense kind of game. Like, what's your game prediction for this weekend? Because mine is question mark.
Yeah, I'm probably going to release mine at the same time as Ohio State's availability report. So it might be after the game Saturday, and I'll tell you how I did then, because I don't like to brag. Although, Tom, I will brag for a second. You mentioned me copying off of your paper. Who was it that finished in second place in trivia this week? Buckeye Scoop Trivia, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Who was that, Tom? Who finished second? Who finished third, please, for the listeners and the viewers?
Well, you were the first loser, and I was the guy, the meme of the guy standing in the podium, biting the medal, spraying the champagne, and standing on the third place on the podium. That was me, living my best life. Yes. And there were like 135 or 138 people, and you finished second, and I finished third. And I said to Mark Givler, "This is the worst possible outcome. I would rather have finished last than finish third, but just behind Gerd. Like, no, this is the worst possible way this could have gone, because I will never hear the end of it."
Did I tell you how I cheated, though? Because
no, but I assumed.
Yes. So, like, one of the first couple, because it's 12 like random questions, and we didn't know what the gist of the questions were going to be. Like one of the first couple of questions were like it was about current Big Ten stat leaders. So then I immediately went to like cfbstats.com and was like looking, okay, who's leading in sacks, who's leading in receptions, who's leading in rushing. And that way, because I knew Mark Givler, he's a predictable person. You don't have to think too much to be above Mark Givler. Let's be honest. And so, like once that happened, I was there.
Just in case you couldn't tell, Mark, that was Tony's voice, not mine. Okay, sorry. Go on. Sorry to interrupt you.
He doesn't listen to the show. So then, when I see these questions, like boom, 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 because like right in a row, sacks, receptions, or whatever, and I had them, and these are guys. You look at who's leading sacks. It's what the dude from Rutgers or Illinois. And it's like nobody knows who that guy is. I think I was one of like 4 people to get that one right, but I that was probably one I already knew.
But the question at the end, which got both of us, was how many editions of the Illibuck Turtle Trophy have there been? Because I got to tell you, I knew a lot of those questions, and I didn't even have to cheat. That one was like, I have literally it has never occurred to me that there have been different turtles at various points in the past. I think the answer was 10. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. I went with 7 with no clue at all. But yes, and in fact, the official wood turtle carver is a family from Indiana. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Do you think that's true?
I assume not because you're smiling, but
yeah, it's totally not true. Why would you go to Indiana for an Illinois turtle?
Because it's right in the middle. It's a good neutral, otherwise you get a turtle carved with a certain bias if it's someone from Illinois or Ohio. Obviously.
How would you show bias in a turtle, Tom?
Make the Illinois side of the turtle just a little better or a little worse.
Like one side of the shell is larger than the other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then it won't float right.
Pretty sure that will warp the wood. I wouldn't put the wooden turtle in water.
All right, Tom, do we have anything else? I think there's really nothing else to discuss because we can't really talk about anything yet. We'll have more Thursday because we'll have Larry Johnson, and I'm sure he'll tell us everybody who's sick, so that'll be good. And then we'll preview some games, including the Michigan State game. But do you have anything else before we get out of here?
Well, if we want to include Urban Meyer for SEO purposes, what are your thoughts on Urban Meyer and the likelihood he takes the Texas job?
What about Urban Meyer on the Ohio State sideline? Yeah, you're asking me now to discuss this?
I'm asking you, yes. Yeah, Urban Meyer taking the Texas job. Now, I will let you know as a hint as to where I'm leaning. There was a report. This is true. There was a report from a website in Austin that Shelley Meyer, Urban's wife, was, quote, eyeing real estate in Austin. So, I mean, I assume that means it's a done deal, yeah?
I think there were the same reports. I think this is how there are 2 ways to follow coaching the carousel. One, flight aware. You're looking for flights. That's how you follow where the school goes. How you follow where the coach is looking is you get these real estate updates on where the wife house shopping. And this is not the first time that a report like this has come out, because I swear that was also the case when maybe they were looking at Columbus. But that you always hear like these kinds of rumors, like who knows, like maybe Miss Terry was looking in Tuscaloosa like 9 years ago while they were living in Miami, the Sabins. But yeah, when I see that, am I stupid for believing it? Maybe. Do I believe it? I think there's a whole lot of truth there. And, Austin is a nice place to live. Are you going to live there just randomly? No. If you're looking between Texas and USC, to me, I think there's so much to like about Texas, honestly. And the recruiting, the fact that you get to play in the Big 12, which should be winnable, or at least you'll just play Oklahoma twice every year. And if you can get them the second game of the year, then you've got a conference championship there. Do I think he will come back? I've said no forever. I am now like 35% yes when I was previously at like 5 to 10% yes.
I'm still leaning fairly strongly no. I still don't think I just find it very difficult to believe that Texas is going to be able to give him everything he wants, because they're going to have to pay Tom Herman a big buyout. Mm-hmm. And Urban Meyer's not going to come cheap. And they've got $150 million stadium renovation. And they've got, $35 million worth of athletic department debt right now. And, and this is one of these things that people don't think about. Oil and gas. The fact that you are paying under $2 a gallon at the gas station, that is not good news for a lot of people in Texas with big hats and big wallets. So that's another thing that's worth keeping an eye on. Wife is searching for that's
John Gruden is on a plane.
That is John Gruden. Yeah, Bill Cowher. I can't tell you how many different times Bill Cowher was searching for real estate in Cleveland when the Browns were looking for a coach. That's just in wrestling. They call fans marks, mm-hmm. And then there's the smart marks who are sort of in on the joke, and being a smart mark is flight aware. Being a mark is the is the fill in the blank real estate rumor. Like, let me tell you how difficult it is to make that up. Type one sentence. End of list of requirements. So yeah. That's don't put a lot of stock in that. My question to you though, if Urban Meyer does decide to move from Columbus to Austin, is it possible for Columbus Crew fans to keep it from happening? It's already happened once. They've already prevented one move to Austin. Can they do it again?
I would say no, because Urban isn't really on Twitter, and I don't think a hashtag is going to impact him. Tom, if you had to choose between like the emotions of a hashtag or, I don't know, $100 million, where are you leaning?
So my options are, I can have $100 million or I can be on Twitter. Those are my options.
Yes.
This is one of these classic Twitter conundrums where it's like, would you rather get shot in the face or live in an island paradise for the rest of your life? I don't know. Do I have to just choose just one of them? Are you sure?
Take some time. Think about it.
Hang on. I'm still mulling this over.
List.
Could be anything. I don't know.
Pros. Desert, beautiful island paradise, not shot in face. Cons, shot in face. Yeah, I think he's having a great time doing what he's doing, but I'm sure he would like to coach. But it doesn't mean like we don't all just go do what we'd like to do. Sometimes you make the decision that, I would like to do that, but I'm having a good time here, and that doing something I'd like to be doing isn't necessary to enjoy my life. I think that's where he is right now. Will he get to the point where like he had to come back to coach Ohio State? Like he had like physically, I have to go do this. And I don't know if that's the case now. Once you become a grandparent, your knees start hurting. It's like, do you really want to go out and like recruit and all of that stuff? I don't know. These kids today, Tom.
These kids who are grandparents? No,
that's the grandparent. That's Urban saying it. Like recruiting like these kids today. They used to be such good kids, and now they're just listening to their musics and their Zune players, and they're just wild. And I can't. That's beyond me. I'm just gonna stick doing TV and being a granddad and just enjoying my pint house.
See, yeah, unlike certain liquor purveyors in Oklahoma, Urban is perfectly happy to just sell his suds and leave the football coaches to the current football coaches.
You make him sound so like he's just slinging beer now. Like he's doing more than that. They also sell food. So,
and he gets to talk on TV every once in a while, and he's and he doesn't. Got to tell you, I have not seen him leaned over with his hands on his knees, looking like he wants to fall into a hole in the ground. So I think in a lot of ways, maybe the lack of stress has been good for him. That's probably actually something for all of us to aspire to. Like, maybe if there was a lot less stress in all of our lives, we might be happier and better off.
Retiring at like 50 ain't so bad, so we should all try it. Tom, does that do it? Are we good? Are we done?
I think we've talked enough about Urban for SEO purposes. We should be all set.
Tom, Ryan Day to Texas? No.
Well, once the recruiting visits open up again, I'm sure he's going to go down and visit the many
Yes,
5-stars he's looted out of the Lone Star State, but not yet. NCAA says he can't go there yet.
And if Urban does go to Texas, I mean, there's so much to talk about there that why waste it now? Although maybe we should waste it now because it probably will not happen. But it doesn't mean we can't talk about it the next show as well. So thank you all for listening and putting up with us. The first half of the show was great. The second half was, I know we were just, talking. So what?
This is what happens when we don't have anything to talk about because we haven't talked to anyone. There hasn't been any news that we can.
We're still trying to give you like 34 or 40 minutes of a podcast. We know you pay good money for these podcasts.
I'm just thinking out loud here. What if Urban Meyer, if we could make the ultimate SEO of Voltron, what if Urban Meyer reunites with one of his former quarterbacks in Austin, Texas? Okay, cool. Hook 'em. Tate Martell back. What do you think?
Oh, that to me is a match made in porn heaven. I want that.
Tate Martell, the rich man, Sam Ellinger.
You know what? Yeah, I can go on Sam Ellinger. Like, what are you doing taking a sack there? Like, you should be so far beyond taking a sack in that situation. Tate Martell would never, sir, take a sack in that situation. For one, he's not getting sacked. For two, he's escaping the pocket. And if he wants to throw, he'll throw it. If he doesn't, he's going to score. He'll just run it into the end zone. So, and you wouldn't even need Dicker the kicker because you've got Tate the great.
And also wide receivers can't get sacked.
Exactly. Tom, he's a quarterback. Come on. Come on, Tom. All right. I'm angry. And I do have to go. I have to swing by Old Navy to pick some stuff up, which is just the worst.
Now, listeners, let us know in the comments of the of our tweet about this episode whether you think Gerd is telling the truth or not. Maybe we'll put up a poll. Is Gerd telling the truth about what he's going to do next? Yes or no?
Just listen to the despair in my voice, and you know it to be true. So, all right, that'll do it. I got to get back home eventually here tonight too. So, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you on Thursday.